Hi there. Today I'm tasting a wine from what has been one of Italy and Tuscany's trailblazing estates, Tenuta San Guido. Tenuta San Guido, better known as the estate that produces Sassicaia, the original Super Tuscan wine from Bolgheri down by the coast in Tuscany. The wine I'm actually tasting is Guidalberto. Guidalberto is regarded as Sassicaia's second wine, I guess, but in fact, in the classic term of a second wine, it's slightly different. I mean, in a Bordeaux sense, if you're making a second wine, you're making it from wines that have been downgraded from those that were being made for the first wine. Actually, here Sassicaia is a blend predominantly of Cabernet Sauvignon with a little Cabernet Franc added to it, and Guidalberto is 60% Cabernet Sauvignon with 40% of Merlot put in it. So the Merlot could never have been downgraded from the Sassicaia. In marketing terms, I guess it's treated as a second label, but that shouldn't denigrate it actually, because it's still made, although it may be made in a sort of for mid to longer term aging, it's still made in a very serious way for cellaring, and sort of to be a wine of finesse and elegance. So, you know, to be taken seriously, but not at quite the price perhaps of Sassicaia. The 2017 vintage in this part of the world was very dry. It's one of the driest since 2003, I think. So there was very little rainfall at all, and also very sunny. So ripening was quite high ripeness levels. Ripeness was advanced, and actually the winemaking had to be tailored to try and tame the tannins that were being produced. The tannins, and there were deep colours as well. So how were they doing that? The fruit was all handpicked. It was then very carefully sorted on sorting tables, but when it was destemmed, because it's entirely destemmed, the fruit was treated gently. It was kept whole, so that whole berries were going into the fermenting vats, and that way, during the period of maceration, the pips are protected from the fermenting juice. So there's less of the really drying wood tannins that would be taken out of those if they were exposed by breaking up the fruit more. Maceration was relatively short, so a couple of weeks for both Cabernet and for Merlot, although with fairly regular pump overs. The wines are allowed to ferment with ambient yeast, so nothing's added there. They're fermented with temperature control, so that they don't go much over about 26 degrees, so not particularly hot extractive fermentation. And this all goes on in tank. The wine does its malolactic conversion in tank and is then put into barrel for 15 months. And a small proportion of those barrels were American oak, which would just give more of a spicy vanilla oak note to the wine, supposedly. So, having said that, let's have a look at the wine, shall we? Firstly, the colour. The colour has a lovely depth, and it's a vibrant mid-ruby. There's not a sort of a purple. There's not a blackness to it, but actually, although there's a depth to it, it's not a dark pigmentation. I can quite clearly see through the glass there. As I swirl it, we're getting some fairly heavy tears forming on the glass there, but then the wine is 14.5% alcohol, so that's unsurprising, and also appears to have quite a lot of extract. Let's have a look at the nose, shall we? Initially, there are two aspects that you get from the nose. Firstly, a sort of quite a juicy, vibrant red fruit, which is in a mulberry, red cherry, I suppose almost sort of hinting at raspberry at the high-toned end of things. It feels ripe and warm. And then the second part that's coming through is a vanilla-y, cedary, spicy oak. There are sweet spices. There's cinnamon, maybe a touch of nutmeg in there, and a vanilla hint behind. But those are all sort of with surrounding this high-toned red fruit, very ripe red cherry maybe, ripe plum, lifted sort of notes. Yes, so delicious red fruit aromas there. So let's taste it. On the palate, you get a slightly different aspect to the fruit. There's much more of an intense black fruit core. I suppose you're talking about almost a brambly, dark cherry, black cherry. Almost a sort of a prune note. It's sort of really rich and deep. It's not quite as overly developed as prune might suggest, but sort of really sort of dark black plum ripe. And then cutting in, you've got the cedary notes. You've got again those sweet spices, the cinnamon notes there. Touches of vanilla, slight chocolatiness, I suppose. The acidity is enough to enliven the fruit. You know, there's almost a sort of a slight red fruit hint as well towards the end. The alcohol, I'm surprised actually at 14.5%, it's not making itself more obvious. The wine has big body and the alcohol will be contributing to that, but this doesn't feel particularly hot. I suppose there is a note that's starting to peak up the spices at the finish, but there's enough fruit that it's not sort of showing through that in a raw sense. The wine is full-bodied. The tannins are smooth, but they're very very present. There's grip without necessarily being astringency, but the grip has a sort of, again, a spicy, cedary, slight peppery note to it, but it's not drying. The finish, the fruit sort of starts to become more perfumed at the end there. It's that more red fruit. There's sort of red currant and mulberry note, and then over the top of that are these sort of pepper and cinnamon notes there. This is a very impressive wine, actually. I mean, it's lively. It's got an intense, youthful fruit, which is open, but actually shows you it's got so much more depth as well. It's a 5-year-old wine. It's still relatively young, but it's approachable now. But it seems to have a long future ahead of it. You know, I think you could quite happily keep that for 10-15 years, and it would be aging beautifully, and probably longer, in fact. So yes, a balanced, elegant wine with opulence. Opulence and richness. Really enjoyable. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you find that interesting. That's Guidalberto 2017 from Tenuta San Guido in Bolgheri in Tuscany. Bye now.